They didn't just betray him. They planned it carefully, patiently, and without guilt. The worst part wasn't losing everything. The worst part was realizing that the people who destroyed his life were the same people he trusted more than his own blood. Before you judge what happens next, ask yourself one question. What would you do if loyalty became your biggest weakness? Ethan Miller was never the loudest man in the room. He didn't chase attention, didn't brag about his work, and never believed in stepping on others to move ahead. In a city like Chicago, where ambition was everything, Ethan believed honesty still mattered. That belief made people trust him, and it also made him an easy target. He worked as a senior financial analyst at Northline Systems, a fast-growing tech company built on speed, money, and secrets. Ethan handled sensitive data, high-level reports, and internal audits. Everyone knew if Ethan signed off on something, it was clean. That reputation took years to build and only days to destroy. Ryan had been Ethan's best friend since childhood. Same neighborhood, same schools, same broken sidewalks and shared dreams. But as adults, their paths changed. Ethan succeeded quietly. Ryan struggled loudly. He joked about it, laughed it off, but deep inside, something dark grew every time Ethan moved ahead. Ryan started asking for help more often. Just review this, he'd say. Add your name, it'll look stronger. Ethan never questioned it. That's what loyalty looked like to him. He didn't notice that Ryan was slowly climbing using his shoulders. Then Claire joined the company. She was sharp, confident, and observant in a way that made people careless around her. As a compliance officer, her job was to find problems, but her real talent was reading people. Ryan noticed her ambition. Claire noticed Ethan's integrity. Their conversations started small, then grew personal. Ethan trusted her with things he had never shared before his father's death, the responsibility of supporting his mother, the pressure of always doing the right thing. Claire listened quietly, remembering every detail. Trust is powerful. In the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. 3 months later, Ethan was called into HR without warning. The room was cold. The faces were colder. A folder slid across the table. Inside were emails he had never written, transaction logs he had never approved, and documents carrying his digital signature. Insider trading, data manipulation, corporate fraud. Ethan felt confused at first. Then he saw the witness list, Ryan, and the compliance report author, Claire. His chest tightened as reality settled in. This wasn't a mistake. This was a setup. Within 48 hours, Ethan lost everything. His job was terminated. His accounts were frozen. His name was quietly destroyed across the industry. Colleagues stopped replying. Recruiters stopped calling. Doors closed without explanation. Ryan stepped into his position without hesitation. Same office, same title. Claire posted a photo that night: champagne glasses, expensive smiles, Ryan's hand resting comfortably on her waist. The caption read, "Sometimes the truth sets you free." Ethan stared at his phone, feeling something break inside him that would never fully heal. That night, alone in his apartment, Ethan replayed every conversation, every favor. Every moment he chose loyalty over self-interest. He realized something terrifying. They didn't just want his job. They wanted his life, his reputation, his future. And they had taken it effortlessly. But Ethan didn't cry. He didn't call anyone. He didn't beg. Instead, he started remembering details: small inconsistencies, overlooked patterns, access points Ryan didn't know he knew, systems Claire assumed he couldn't understand. In the silence, a dangerous clarity formed. For the first time since losing everything, Ethan smiled. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. They believed he was finished. They were wrong. Part 2. The silent Rizaverione believed Ethan Miller was finished. Fired, disgraced, erased from the industry. That's how these stories usually end. But this one didn't. Because when everything is taken from a man, fear disappears. And fearlessness is dangerous. Ethan didn't try to fix his reputation. He didn't defend himself online. He didn't explain his side to anyone. He vanished quietly, letting the world believe the version of him they were given. Silence became his shield. For weeks, Ethan lived small, cheap apartment, no social media, no contact with anyone from his old life. To the outside world, he looked broken. But inside, something else was happening. Every night, he replayed the betrayal like a puzzle. Ryan's rushed emails, Claire's perfectly timed reports, the transactions that made no sense unless someone understood the system from the inside. Ethan had built that system. He knew where its weaknesses were buried. And he knew exactly who was arrogant enough to leave fingerprints behind. Ryan enjoyed his new life, new office, new title, new confidence. He spoke Ethan's name carefully now, as if it were a bad memory he had outgrown. In meetings, he repeated Ethan's ideas as if they were his own. Management applauded him. Claire stood beside him, watching everything with quiet satisfaction. They believed the danger was gone. That belief made them careless. Ethan started working again, but not where anyone could see him. He took short-term consulting jobs under a different name, using a shell company he had once helped design for Northline. He didn't chase money. He chased access. Slowly, he re-entered the same financial networks that had expelled him. Different face, same brain. No one recognized him. That anonymity gave him freedom. Late at night, Ethan studied logs most people never read. Old backups, archived compliance reports, timestamps that didn't match explanations. He noticed something subtle. The fraud blamed on him continued after his termination. Small amounts, cleanly hidden. Ryan hadn't stopped. He didn't understand the system well enough to change his habits. Claire adjusted reports just enough to hide it, believing no one would ever look that closely again. They forgot one thing. Ethan had designed the original safeguards, and he had left himself a way back in. One evening, Ethan received an email meant for Ryan. It was accidental, or careless. A vendor complaint, a missing approval, a digital signature that didn't belong. Ethan didn't smile. He waited. Revenge wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about timing. Claire began noticing pressure at work. Regulators asking questions. Audits scheduled unexpectedly. She reassured Ryan it was routine, but something in her voice changed. Confidence turned into control. Control turned into panic. Ryan started making mistakes. He stayed late, drank more, trusted fewer people. He didn't know the walls were already closing in. Ethan never contacted them. Not once. He let the system do the talking. Anonymous tips, quiet document uploads, perfectly timed alerts sent to the right departments. Nothing dramatic, nothing traceable, just enough truth to force attention. Investigations moved slowly at first. Then, all at once, one morning, Ryan walked into the office to find compliance officers waiting at his desk. Claire watched from across the room, her face perfectly still. She knew then, not that something was wrong but that someone had outplayed them. For the first time, fear entered the room. Real fear. Ethan sat alone, listening to the city hum outside his window. He didn't feel joy. He felt calm, controlled. This wasn't revenge yet. This was positioning. The fall hadn't happened, but it was inevitable. Now, Part 3, the collapse if he thought they had won. Ryan was still pacing his office, muttering to himself about missteps he hadn't made, imagining enemies in every corner. Claire sat across from him, calm on the surface, but trembling inside, trying to figure out which of her own mistakes had been exposed. Emails she had altered months ago now stood against her, with timestamps and approvals proving she had manipulated them. Her mind raced. How could Ethan have known? How could he plan so perfectly, without ever showing himself? Every move she had made, every document she had touched had been observed. Every single one. And she realized then that the man she had underestimated was not just back, he was already ahead. The board convened an emergency meeting that morning. Executives who once praised Ryan now looked at him with skepticism. Claire tried to interject, tried to explain away inconsistencies, but her voice faltered. The auditors presented the evidence in a way that left no room for manipulation. Small transactions, seemingly meaningless, now formed a clear pattern. And at the center of it all was Ethan, the man they had destroyed. Ryan's face turned pale as realization set in. The empire he had thought he built on Ethan's shoulders was collapsing. Every lie, every shortcut, every attempt to cover their tracks was now turning against them. By noon, the first formal inquiries were underway. Legal teams arrived at the office. Ryan tried to call for help, but the evidence was overwhelming. Claire's attempts to salvage the situation only drew more attention. Reports she had altered were being cross-referenced. Emails she had believed erased were now central to proving the truth. Every attempt to push blame failed. Each one only highlighted how carefully Ethan had observed, how methodically he had prepared. The people who thought they had won were now fighting to save their careers, and nothing could protect them. As the day turned into evening, the psychological pressure on Ryan and Claire became unbearable. Ryan was shouting at staff, making irrational decisions, realizing too late that he had been trapped. Claire, once composed and confident, was forced to retreat to her office, reviewing documents over and over, hoping desperately for some loophole, some chance to regain control. But there was none. Every action she had taken was accounted for. Every decision had already been anticipated. And somewhere in the shadows, Ethan remained untouchable, calm, victorious without ever showing his face. Finally, after hours of meetings, confrontations, and explanations, the truth could no longer be contained. The media, tipped anonymously, began reporting discrepancies. Public statements were made, names cleared, and reputations questioned. And in that moment, Ryan realized the full extent of his defeat. Claire understood that control she once held had vanished completely. And Ethan? He watched from afar as justice unfolded. Naturally, no yelling, no drama, no desperation. Only the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed flawlessly. Ethan's phone buzzed once that night, a message from an unknown number. Simple words. It's done. They know. They remember. He smiled, knowing that every step had been perfect, every moment intentional. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need applause. He had reclaimed what was stolen, restored his reputation, and ensured that those who betrayed him fully understood the consequences. The silence had spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. Part 4 Final payoff. Ethan didn't rush. He didn't celebrate. The last move was simple, quiet, unstoppable. By now, Ryan and Claire had learned the hard way that control was an illusion, that every shortcut, every lie, every betrayal had consequences they could never predict. The company had begun correcting itself, internal audits completed, media coverage spreading quietly but unmistakably, and public trust returning where it had been shaken. Every domino Ethan had set in motion fell perfectly into place. And the ones responsible for destroying his life finally understood the scale of their miscalculation. Ryan sat alone in a boardroom late at night, staring at the reports Ethan had orchestrated. Every falsified approval, every minor fraud, every alteration they had tried to hide was now documented, analyzed, and undeniable. He couldn't lie. He couldn't deflect. The man he had destroyed had not only survived, but dominated silently. Panic, shame, and regret filled the room. Ethan didn't need to confront him. He didn't need to shout. His work spoke louder than any threat ever could. Claire paced in her office, reviewing emails, notes, and every document she had touched. She realized that for all her intelligence, she had underestimated Ethan's foresight. Each move she had made to secure power, each tiny decision to protect her position, had been anticipated. For the first time in her life, she felt helpless. The calm, confident exterior she had maintained for years was gone, replaced by the quiet terror of understanding that the one she had betrayed had outsmarted her completely. Why now? The story had reached the people who mattered. Internal memos, regulatory compliance, and subtle media reports aligned perfectly. Northline's board recognized the truth. Ethan's name was cleared publicly. Ryan and Claire were left to reckon with their decisions in silence, every friend, colleague, and contact seeing the consequences of betrayal without Ethan ever needing to speak a word. He didn't need revenge in the dramatic sense. Justice, when delivered silently and flawlessly, is more powerful than any confrontation. Ethan finally stepped back, taking a quiet breath in his apartment. No applause, no confrontation, no need to prove himself. The truth had spoken, and it had done so without noise. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel a weight lift. He had lost everything, but in patience, intelligence, and timing, he had gained not only what was stolen, but a freedom and peace that no betrayal could ever touch again. Silence had been his ally, and it had worked perfectly. And now, Ethan knew the final truth. Betrayal may destroy trust, but it can never destroy foresight, intelligence, or patience. For those who trust in timing, calm strategy, and calculated action, no enemy is unbeatable. And for anyone who watched this story unfold, the lesson is clear. Don't rush. Observe, plan, and wait. Revenge, when done correctly, doesn't need chaos, it needs precision. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, subscribe now to follow more high-stakes stories of betrayal, justice, and revenge. And share this story with someone who needs to see how patience and intelligence can turn the tables completely.